Hello, everyone. Welcome to Garden State Greenlight, a podcast powered by ROI-NJ, examining the business, policy, and economic forces shaping New Jersey's film and television industry. I'm your host, Thomas Phillip, multimedia journalist for ROI-NJ, as well as a filmmaker, writer, director, producer, editor, and performer. But most of all, I am incredibly excited to bring you today's episode. So today's guest is Phil Mazo, a comedic filmmaker and viral content creator known for his absurd deadpan style and twist-driven storytelling. His work has been recognized by major festivals and arts organizations, including the New Jersey State Council on the Arts. Phil's latest short, Replay, is a docu-comedy that screened nationwide before feature films at hundreds of art house cinemas, including Landmark, Cinepolis, and Angelica Theaters. The film played top festivals such as Palm Springs International ShortFest and the Calgary International Film Festival, where it won the Audience Choice Award for Best Documentary Short and was later longlisted for the Academy Award for Best Documentary Short Film. Outside the festival world, Phil's viral comedy videos have reached nearly 100 million views worldwide, with fans praising his work as absolute cinema. He's currently producing a true crime feature with comedic undertones. Phil, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
We'll start with how did you get into filmmaking?
Well, I always, for as long as I remember, wanted to be an actor and a filmmaker. And basically, in my mind, I was always like, well, you have to go to college and this and that. So I didn't really, actually, that's not true. I was going to say I didn't really start until after college, but the fact of the matter is I did make short films in high school. So I started, dabbling in that kind of stuff in high school. But then I went to college and I was like, okay, let me just get through college and then I'll start pursuing filmmaking. And after college, I interned at this small production company in the Bronx called Harrington Talents. They're still around. And that was the perfect internship for me. I was so excited when I got that because I was actually doing stuff. I was editing, I was shooting, I was learning how to do all the things I wanted to do. I wasn't just simply picking up coffee and doing like things that had nothing to do with filmmaking. And after about a year there, I was kind of like, I feel like I picked up all the skills I need, and from then on, just continued doing video production on my own and also pursuing filmmaking through making like sketches and more and more short films and other things.
As I mentioned in your bio, you received a fellowship from the New Jersey Council on the Arts. Tell me a little about how, what led to that fellowship.
Well, I learned of it because a very good, talented filmmaker friend of mine who also lives in New Jersey named Yuri Alves won this fellowship, maybe I want to say like 2021 or so, maybe 2022. And they gave him, some money. And I was like, whoa, that's cool to know that this exists. It's for artists of any kind. So they swap it out. So one year might be like, okay, visual arts, this, that, blah, blah, blah. The other year. When I learned of this fellowship because my friend won it, I was like, whoa, I should apply for that the next year that it's available. And so I did, and I submitted a film, and I ended up winning it, and they awarded me $16,500, which was really amazing.
What was the film that you submitted?
So funny enough, the film I submitted is a short film called I'm Phil. And what's funny about that is part of the submission process is you need to redact any part of the film or application or anything that may indicate what your identity is. Because what's cool about this fellowship is it's entirely merit-based and you're judged by your peers. So for filmmaking, it would be other, I guess, New Jersey filmmakers. I don't know specifically who would have been part of it. And they're supposed to judge you purely on the work. And so, in that spirit, they also don't want the people who are judging to know who you are because, let's say you've got a big name or something, then that might affect their judging.
Right. Yeah.
So, but my film was called I'm Phil, and it was about me, and it was starring me, and I think if I recall, I might even have say my full name in the film. I don't remember, but in any case, as part of my application, I was very careful to redact everything about me, and I did at some point email the New Jersey State Council on the Arts while I was making the application to be like, if the film is called I'm Phil, let's say, or but for all they know, this is just the name of a character. It's not necessarily my name. Is that cool? I had to be very careful about making
Right.
sure everything was redacted, even though the film was very specifically about me.
That's hysterical. How did you make the film?
So this was a film that I made in the middle of COVID, like really actually early on, deep in isolation. It was April of 2020, and I just made it by myself in my apartment. And yeah, I made everything entirely by myself. I shot it, I edited it, I wrote it, and I played two parts in it. I used a tripod to film myself, and it's a way that I've had a lot of experience working in, doing every aspect, but yeah, that's how I made it.
How has receiving the fellowship impacted your ability to take creative risks, or has it?
Well, obviously, suddenly having $16,500 that was not lying around uh, does sort of ease things a little bit. And the idea is, even though the funds are, for the most part, unrestricted, there's certain things they don't want you to use it for. I can't remember all the specifics, but for example, they don't want you to like travel abroad with it or something like that. I do believe that if I recall, like it was okay to use it for rent or whatever. Like the idea was like it's meant to facilitate you as an artist. And I was very intentional with it. I actually opened up a dedicated bank account that I put specifically that in, and I only withdrew from that account when it specifically had anything to do with my filmmaking or creativity. Related to video and stuff like that. So I even imposed more constraints on myself than even the fellowship did. Like for instance, I did not use it for rent and things like that. That as I recall, you are allowed to use it for. Um, so there was the financial aspect of it, but I think even more importantly, it was extremely validating on so many levels because it's essentially someone putting their money where their mouth is in telling you that you're good and they like what you do. Obviously, it's always nice to hear that from people, but if they're not opening up their pockets, it words are inexpensive, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So when someone actually opens up their pockets, in this case, the New Jersey government, it's very validating and also it's validating in the sense that it's almost like state sponsored, because my film is comedic, so it means for me personally, like it means even more because it's almost kind of like we're not just putting our stamp of approval on your filmmaking, but also on your sense of humor. That means a lot to me because I can't say that everything I do, I would expect an institution to back. You know what I mean?
And it's nice to get that recognition for you're based in New Jersey, right?
Yeah,
Where at?
in Newark.
Yeah. So it's nice to get that sort of recognition, even from your home, state.
Totally. And the other thing about it also is, like I said, like it's merit based. So
Yeah,
that really is also incredibly validating because it's like they're literally saying, like, we believe that your art is worth m money, regardless of who you are, what your background is, any connections you may or may not have. Like, we like what you do.
definitely. From your perspective, why are programs like this one, why are they important for artists working in New Jersey?
Well, they're important because to be paid for your art is not a common thing, and it's you know, people manage to do it, but it's not easy. So A, it's a way to be paid for your art, right? B, you're being paid for your art regardless of the market. So in other words, like people aren't eh, you know, the public is not voting with its dollars, right? Which is also, that's a whole other thing, and that means something as well. But you could argue that when they're doing that, perhaps the art is not as pure because maybe you're catering to the consumers, right?
Right.
In this case, when an institution like this is paying just purely for the art, you could argue that it incentivizes purity in the art because it's sort of like, hey, we don't care whether or not this has value in the market. You know what I mean?
Right.
You can express yourself purely, and assuming that, your peers, want to award you something, the value is, you know what it is? It's like, how MGM's motto is like art for art's sake.
Yes.
But the fact of the matter is, it's not exactly, because they also have stockholders who
Right. Yeah.
probably are more interested in money. In this case, I really feel like it is art for art's sake. You know what I mean?
Right. Plus, MGM, I think, is owned by Amazon right now too. So
Oh
I
yeah.
don't, yeah, I don't know how accurate that motto is anymore. I want to talk a little bit about your latest short film, Replay. For people who haven't seen it yet, how would you describe it to them?
Well, there's a few ways I like to describe it. My sort of elevator pitch is just to, like, a very quick sort of synopsis is, when I was 12 years old, I appeared on a public access show in New Jersey to talk about chess because I was a big chess player. And at some point, the interviewer asked me a very unexpected, borderline inappropriate question. And this is a hard-hitting documentary about that moment. And it's got a one-of-a-kind ending you'll never see anywhere else. And also it's a docu-comedy, which, not to be confused with a mockumentary, because a mockumentary is not real. This actually is real, but also comedic. This was inspired by public access footage of myself that I have on a VHS that I was watching over COVID as I was digitizing a bunch of tapes, just as one of my many COVID projects. When I saw this particular moment in the show that was very sort of bizarre and funny, I was just like, oh my God, it would be really funny to do something with this. But interestingly enough, my initial concept and execution of it was as just like a short social media comedy thing that um, slowly evolved into a short film through a bunch of like creative problem solving. And part of what I loved about it, about this project, was it was sort of like a journey of like the creative process, because
Yeah.
its final product was not my original intention, but it was like, by through the process, I realized this is what it needed to be.
What were some of the your biggest challenges during the production?
Well, I would say that my biggest challenge was editing this. A lot of the story I'm sort of creating within editing, and I'm really embellishing on the reality of it. I actually gave this presentation to the YouTube Partner Program, which I'm a member of, and I've given a few presentations. And I gave a
Mhm.
presentation on this film called "Transforming Nothing into Something: The Editing Magic Behind Replay." And I demonstrated how I had this VHS footage, and there was really only one remarkable thing that happened. But in order to develop this into an entire like story that was exciting and funny beyond just that moment, I took all these elements from the video and recontextualized them.
Mm.
And so, because I was sort of like creating this within editing, that was challenging because it's like I had to figure it out. It was very tedious. I wanted to make sure that it was cohesive And I would often take months long breaks editing it because it's like I needed like a break and I needed a refresher. And so even though this short film is only 3.5 minutes, I edited it over the course of a year.
Replay had theatrical distribution, which is super rare, pretty much almost non-existent for short films. How did that opportunity come to be?
I actually really love this story because it was very serendipitous. It played at this festival in North Carolina called River Run. And the day after I returned from the festival, the director sent of that festival sent me an email saying that this company called Spotlight Cinema Networks reached out to them, and they basically do the pre-show for a bunch of luxury and art house cinemas, and they're looking for a short film to put in their pre-show, and they had like a list of criteria which she showed me like what their list of criteria was, and I'm like, oh my God, Replay fits this entire list of criteria. And she said that she would like to put Replay forward, and I was like, of course, like let's do it. And then after about it all moved so quickly. After about 3 weeks, we got the approval from them, and then it was in theaters maybe a month after that. And this was back in May of 2025. So this last May, it started being in theaters, and to the best of my knowledge, it's still in theaters. I don't know for a fact. Contractually, it was supposed to be in theaters for 1 month, but I get letterbox reviews as recently as like last month that are like, oh, I just saw this at such and such theater, so that's why I know it's still in theaters. But I haven't gotten that a review like that in like a month. That's why I can't be 100% sure. The longer story, which is what I love about this, is that the only reason I ended up at that festival in North Carolina was because I have a friend who lives down there who's like a TikTok influencer, and he's got like, 250,000 followers. And I was communicating with him like, man, it'd be really cool to collaborate on something. And he was like, yeah, like that'd be great. And I said, I have this short film. Maybe if I can get into some kind of festival in North Carolina, it would give me an excuse to go down there and then we can do something. And he said, great. And I was like, do you know any festivals? And he put me in touch with a filmmaker friend of his down there who recommended a few festivals, and this was at the top of the list, this festival. So I submitted to this festival. I got in. Turned out this is actually like a really good festival. I just personally hadn't heard of it, but like it's like a very top regional festival. They had really good films there. I felt very honored to be part of the block I was in. It was just like really top-notch stuff. There was like an HBO documentary.
Wow.
Um, and so what I love about this is that I wasn't chasing the theater thing. I didn't even know such a thing existed. I was just chasing my own creativity and wanting to make some comedy content. And by chasing that, I ended up in this festival. The festival told me about this thing, and out of all that, I ended up in theaters, and that's what I love about this particular story. It was kind of a lesson to me of like, okay, if you just focus on the work and focus on just like doing stuff, opportunities will happen.
And this was available at the in the Academy screening room, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, do you want
yeah,
to talk a little bit about that?
sure. So through my theatrical distribution, I this film became Oscar eligible because that's one of the ways that you can be Oscar eligible. And so Replay was longlisted for the Oscars. It was in the preliminary round of voting uh, for the best documentary short film. And it was competing against like 117 short documentary films. Um, so that was really cool. Another sort of like feather in my cap, something cool I could talk about. I did a little bit of campaigning, if you could call it that. It's an interesting world. So, until Replay became Oscar eligible, I really didn't know anything about this process. And then once I learned that, they put it in the Academy screening room and it was up for it, I was like, okay, now what? Like, what do I do? So I started calling people. I got in touch with someone I know who actually had a short documentary film shortlisted for the Oscars. I don't know how long ago, but maybe 5 years ago or something. And what I learned is that even for a short documentary film, if you really want to do a serious Oscar push, you are looking at over $100,000 toward, your campaign, which
Right.
goes
Yeah.
to PR, advertising, blah, blah, blah. So obviously, I'm not about to spend that kind of money.
Right.
Um, I don't know. Maybe there might be a world in which I would consider trying to raise that, but I wasn't, but what I did was like I posted some things on social media. I sort of like reached out to my network to let them know. Hopefully, Academy members who are ultimately the ones who vote might catch wind of it. Um, and I put out like a mailer to so one thing you could do is the only way to directly reach out to Academy members is you can send an e-blast through one of the official mailing houses, which is very expensive, you know. And so I did one of those just because I'm like, okay, that's a lot of money, but I want to like at least I want to feel like I did something. I don't want to just sit. I don't want to sit back and do nothing because, I don't know if and when I'll get this opportunity to get again. So even though I'm not ready to try and raise six figures toward this, let me make a tiny little bit of effort. So all of which is to say, I had no expectations that that Replay was going to move on, um, and it did not. But of the 117 short documentary films, 15 were shortlisted. What is that, like 10% or less than 10% odds of moving on? And again, it's all about awareness because there's no obligation for people to watch every single film. So if they don't know about your film, they might not even watch it.
I wish we did this interview sooner so that the New Jersey Arts Council can see this and maybe give you another fellowship or something to, support that campaign.
Yeah, that would have been nice.
Yeah. Replay was a Small Mallet Pictures production. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about what Small Mallet Pictures is and go into that a little bit?
Small Mallet Pictures is my production company, and um, it's essentially me, but it's just my brand and a formalization of what I do. I actually established that also during COVID. I can't remember exactly when, but fairly recently. But it was during COVID, and I was just kind of like thinking, COVID for me and for a lot of people was, a time to like sort of take inventory. And it's like, okay, what am I trying to do with my life and this and that? And it was me being like, I want to formalize kind of what I'm doing, give it a name, and give it a brand. And so that's essentially what that is.
And what are the types of projects that you produce as a brand?
So films, not the short films I've done, and I'm also working on a feature right now, which is also under that brand. And I've got a few partners, so there's a few companies behind it. Commercials and essentially creative work that is almost always comedic, but doesn't necessarily have to be. It just tends to be because that tends to be my preferred mode of expression, but it's not sometimes I don't do something comedic, but it's always something creative. So I think of it as films, commercials that are really creative forward, like not just like a gig, like it's entertainment.
What are some of your long-term goals for Small Mallet Pictures? I know you said
Uh,
feature, but what else is going on in your brain?
well, yeah, I mean, my big time long-term goals are feature films.
Hmm.
And but it could be more short films, um, documentaries, comedic commercials, things like that. But the real thing is feature films.
What are some of the biggest challenges of running, a production company like this, in the state or just in general?
I guess the biggest challenge for me is marrying creativity with commerce because I'm really putting creativity first. What's easy as a production company is to provide video and editing services. A lot of people need that, but that's not what Small Mallet Pictures does. We're not just going to shoot your wedding or even shoot a commercial that is just like informational. What I'm trying to do is make something creative and entertaining um, with that focus in mind. So yeah, I would say the biggest challenge is marrying creativity with commerce. I don't know how well I do keep that balance intact because I'm someone, and by extension, Small Mallet Pictures is an organization that puts creativity first. A good example of where there might not be a balance is, for instance, you might be aware that I shot a spec commercial, like a comedic spec commercial for cataract surgery. That was inspired because a potential client reached out to me. They loved what I do. They thought my work was really funny, and they wanted some funny commercials. So I wrote some, uh, that cataract commercial being one of them, and they absolutely loved it. When I presented the budget to them, it sort of like fell through. They were kind of like, okay, maybe I'm not as excited about this as I was.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And where the lack of balance comes in is because I am so creative minded and sort of sacrificing everything for creativity is I was like, oh, okay. Well, I love this idea so much that I'm going to do it anyway, and I'm going to pay for it. And guess what? I don't have a client. So the funny thing is what should be someone is paying me to do something turns out to be that I'm paying for it myself to do it because to answer your question, I'm not really great at balancing that stuff.
It is a tough thing to do as an artist because people only want to focus on the art or you only want to focus on the business. It's hard to find that balance. It does seem though to me, from my perspective anyway, that you have a good balance because not a lot of people can even have the mindset to say, well, I'm just going to make this commercial on spec and whoever wants it can have it.
My whole thing is like I just want to make stuff that I'm proud of and that I just love making stuff art for art's sake. It's like I do just want to make it, but also I do feel very strongly that making things will lead to the opportunities, as I discovered, for instance, with Replay, where I was just making a short film and suddenly it's in theaters, and I did get a licensing fee for that, so it's like that was an example of like I'm making something without any promise of any kind of financial reward, and the reward came, and so that was my attitude with this commercial also, where I'm like, this is a really great idea that I think is really funny, and I would love to make it, and maybe I'll find a client for it, and if even if I don't find a client, now I have an example to the world of what I can do, and so in one way or another, something will come of it, but at the very least making work that I'm proud of is is going to be the result.
I even like to say that independent film is sort of like the film industry's way of saying small business.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, you know, much like a short film, or much like a small business rather, short films typically don't have big teams. They don't have unlimited funds. You have to you have to have creative problem solving in order to get things done. You can't work, you're working at a smaller scale, but there's some advantages that come with that. Also, there's more freedom, maybe less bureaucracy. Um, and yeah, I think It's a good analogy.
How could New Jersey support independent productions?
There's a lot of infrastructure that's being built in New Jersey that is very exciting. It's almost kind of like, in many ways, the film industry began in New Jersey, with Thomas Edison and all that stuff. And some of the earliest Hollywood productions were shot in and around New Jersey before everything moved to Hollywood. And it's kind of an exciting time where things are kind of like coming back. But the question is, how do New Jersey filmmakers kind of get plugged into that infrastructure that is uh, being built out here? And maybe there is some sort of path that I'm just not aware of. I'm not super up on all that stuff, but if there is, it would be really great if there was sort of like clarity in what that process is. And if there isn't, it'd be really great if the state sort of put that in place where it's like, hey, you know, these studios are being built here, there's a lot of productions coming here. Here's like a sort of, I don't know, way to sort of become one of the vendors or put yourself up as like an editor or something. And again, maybe that exists. I might just be ignorant, but if it does exist, I'm personally not aware of it, and maybe I could do my research, but it would also be cool that if someone just like held my hand. But I think that would be like basically the biggest thing that could be done, which is to be like, listen, there's a lot of this is sort of like becoming like, if not the new Hollywood, a new Hollywood. Um, if there was sort of like a very clear pathway on how people like me, like independent filmmakers, editors, shooters could get plugged into that.
With all the Netflixes and the Lionsgate, all that coming in. It's huge for the state, and I'm happy it's coming. But you just don't want it to drown out a voice like yours.
I don't know if that's my concern, the getting
Hmm.
drowned out thing, because the beauty is, what excites me about this time is that with YouTube and TikTok and all that stuff, but especially YouTube.
Yeah.
YouTube, from my understanding, has made more money than any other production company or media company or studio.
Yep.
Uh, and continues to do so. And the beauty is that we all have access to that. So although we can't, people like us, like independent filmmakers, can't compete with the scale of some of these studios because maybe we don't have the money, we don't have, the resource and things like that. We can, on some level, compete with the distribution.
What advice would you give to independent creatives trying bold moves, like, for example, putting a short film into theaters?
I would say follow your passion and your vision and just focus on the work because I believe strongly and I feel like I've had evidence in my life that the work is what opens up opportunities. Some guy from Seattle reached out to me being like, hey, I'm interested in getting into filmmaking. I see that you're a filmmaker and all this and that. I'd love to get on a call. So I'm always happy and excited to like mentor people and things like that. So I was happy to get on a call with him. One thing he asked me about was, you know, how do I recommend what's a good way to network with people? And I asked him like, what do you want to do specifically? And he said he wants to be a cinematographer. And I'm like, okay, well, are you shooting anything? And he's like, not really, not yet, and this and that. And I was like, well, I would recommend shooting stuff with your friends and focusing on that. And then he kind of like went back on like the networking thing. And I'm like, well, I personally believe that the best way for a filmmakers to network is by going to film festivals, specifically by getting into film festivals and going to them. But if you don't have anything to show, then I don't think you're going to get anything out of it, And so
Yep.
I don't think there's any point to networking without anything to show because it's like, okay, great, here's a nice guy, we got along, but what do you like, what's your work? Like, what do you do? Like, what do you like? I want to see it. You know what I mean? For me, it always goes back to like the work. Just like focus on the work, and the work is what will open up opportunities for you. Um, And so that would be my recommendation, which is to focus on the work. And beyond that, sort of along the same lines, rely entirely on your work. Don't rely on gatekeepers. And gatekeepers, I think, are becoming less and less of a thing. But when I was younger, I just had this perception and attitude of like, oh, if only like someone in such a position like recognizes my talent, they'll pull me in and like do this thing with me. And that was, I feel like I focused, not that I focused, but like I thought that that would be my way to advance in the career that I want to do. And maybe that kind of thing happens from time to time, but over my lifetime, I've come to realize and or believe at least that like that is not going to happen. You can't rely on that. Uh, you have to create your own opportunities, and you do that by doing the work. If you have an idea that excites you enough that you're going to see it through, then just do that and focus on that and don't worry about anything else.
So, what is the main thing that excites you the most moving forward about the film industry or about independent film, or about the work you're doing? What excites you the most for the future?
I think what excites me the most is, this whole YouTube world and TikTok world and all that stuff that has really made it so that one can create an audience, build an audience, and find an audience with the things they create without permission from anybody. And so it means that the opportunity is out there. It's up to you whether, it's up to you to make it happen, but you don't need to wait for permission or ask for permission. So I think that excites me. So like when I right now I have like a another feature film idea that I'm developing, and I'm just filled with like a lot of optimism because I'm like, if I make this thing, at the very least, I could post it on YouTube, like if nothing else, I could post it on YouTube, and I get you don't know what's going to happen, but what you've seen happen and could happen is that millions of people could see it. And so you can still find that audience and you can still actually make money off of it. And you can advance your career because, if it finds success there, then other people, are suddenly interested and things like that. So I'm just excited by the distribution opportunities. And also for me specifically, I've been having a lot of things go viral, and so um, that that sort of excites me about uh, I've proven to myself that I'm capable of making things that go viral, and so it just makes me want to double down more and more on that and be like, okay, like I can make it happen again, and I can keep doing it, and um, that kind of makes me think also, um, that's the other important thing, by the way, sorry to backtrack a little bit, but about creating your own work is that until you until you do that, you're not really sure what you're capable of. And when you do create things and when they do find whatever kind of success they do, like in my case, for example, things getting millions of views or coming into theaters, that is what that's the proof of concept to myself that like, okay, like I realize that I'm capable of this, and now I have even more confidence in my vision for the next thing because I realize that like if I see my vision through, good things happen. Before it was just like it was like I hope good things happen, and now I have evidence.
Thank you so much for being on here. This was a great conversation. Really love talking to you, and congratulations on everything.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. It was great talking to you.
Awesome. Take care.